Alrighty, now we're back with another guide on the channel, and you guys already know I've been uploading so many guides this past couple days, but on this one it's specifically the Shadow Self Magician. Now this fight might be annoying for solo players. It's gonna be annoying the first time you ever do this because you won't understand what's going on. It actually took me a couple runs just to figure out what is actually happening, and then after that I was able to make a guide for this. So if you follow the exact spells that I'm using in this guide, you should be fine in a team of 4, a team of 3, team of 2. But if you are a solo player, there are some risks, and I will be talking about that as well. Just because the deck that they gave this boss is actually annoying. The fact that this person has bad juju in their deck is very annoying for you solo players. Now, if you're a myth, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more easier because you can just clear the weaknesses and hit at the same time. But for those people that aren't going to run those things, it's going to be a little bit annoying, and you have to be careful using certain cards. So we'll talk all about that. But if you do enjoy these guides, remember, leave a like, subscribe, all type of stuff. And let's get into the cheats before we get into the strategies and whatnot, because it might take me a little bit while explaining all the strategies. So if we go into the cheats, and this is basically what I've written down, of course the wiki will eventually have like a more detailed explanation, but this one I actually had to write things a little bit weird. But basically, to start off with the first cheat, I am you, your mirror, I speak your words, feel your heart. Cast immunity round 1. So the whole gimmick is there's an immunity aura that this magician plays, and there's going to be some hanging effects that casted later on. Just remember though, with this immunity aura, you can't use attenuate, you can't use supernova. The boss will literally just recast it and say the exact same cheat. So just be wary when you're doing this and you're trying to cheese it in any sort of way. The next cheat is you must acknowledge painful truths and comfort lies. The boss will cast a dot on self and a healing over time on each wizard on round 2. So you've probably seen this, like what is the point of this? And then at the same time, at the end of round 4, this is a random one from my experience. It might put a dot or it might put a hot. Very confusing, I know. I don't know why this boss exists, but anyways, it plays a little bit of randomness factor, so you do have to remember that. And then you do have the other cheat where it's like, yes, see the obvious, embrace the hurt, ignore the lies. Now this is where everything comes in play. Casting a blade, any blade, a multi-blade, dual blade, whatnot, moves the healing over time to the boss, right? And then if you cast a trap, it moves the damage over time to the wizard that casted it. So basically, you want to have all the healing over times on the boss and all the players to have the damage over times. So you're using blades and traps to keep moving them between the boss and you. But there is some cheese that you can kind of, I guess you can call it cheese. Don't know if it's intended, but multi-traps move multiple dots, but multi-blades do not move over multiple hots. For my testing, I kind of did this multiple times to even have many hots and many traps. It might be changed later on because when I recorded this video, I think it was like the 2nd week of test realm. So it's possible within like the 3rd week, there were some changes. So just be wary. This was recorded on test realm, so things change, just putting that out there, which we are going to be using multi-traps to help us move things a lot quicker. Then you have the other cheat where it says, are you seeing the truth beyond the comfort lie? If all healing overtimes are on the boss and all damage overtimes are on the wizard side, so meaning it could be on any of the wizards, just needs to be on the wizard side, the boss will remove the immunity aura. But once the boss casts another hot or a damage over time, the immunity aura will be casted once again till all the hanging effects are on the correct side. So there is a cycle that is within this boss, and within that cycle you will need to put another trap or another blade. So be wary every time you are trying to do this fight. Then there is one last cheat that I was able to find, which is you deny pain, but its shadow lingers. if a wizard attempts to kill a boss and they do not have a single damage overtime on them, the boss will respawn, meaning they'll just come back alive or whatnot, and they'll have full HP. So whenever you have all the damage overtimes on the wizard side and all the healing overtime on the boss, it'll remove its aura, of course. But if the person that's killing does not have a damage overtime on them, they will not be able to kill the boss, and will just come back alive with full HP and put another hanging effect on everybody. So I would, pay attention on how to do this. And then one thing I do want to put a note on this boss's deck is they do have bad juju in their deck. So if you are trying to do this solo, I mean, I got kind of lucky. You can definitely run the risk, but if you do cast Feint, be wary that the boss has bad juju and can get rid of those feints indirectly and put a -90 on you. So you just have to run the risk if you are trying to do this solo, or you can prolong the fight even more. But just remember, if you are about to hit and they do bad juju, you're kind of just screwed in this fight. You either have to start over or purge yourself and then try again. There's a little bit of issues when you're trying to do solo, so I'm just gonna put this out there right now. Now let's go over the 4-player strat, and then we'll move on to the 3 and the 2-player strat, and then we'll move on to solo. I actually made strategies for this specific reason, due to the fact of there's so many things that are on play. So 4 players, it's very easy. Everyone passes round 1, and then you're gonna have the hitter in the last slot. So make sure you're in a group or adventure party so you guys get turn 1 prio. It is actually needed in this fight because of that bad juju. So I do recommend it. And then round 2, everyone's gonna cast a blade on the last person, which is the hitter. Now, of course, whoever your hitter is, whether it be a storm, fire, a death, life, whatever, right? I would recommend blading the last person. I wouldn't put a balance as the hitter. I mean, you can, but I mean, hopefully they're hitting with an elemental hit or a spirit hit, not a balance hit. But yeah, just blade the last person, whether it be elemental or spirit. Then on the round after that, which is the 3rd round, we're going to actually use tri-traps in our advantage. So what happens in this fight is it puts a dot and a hot depending on how many players there are. So if there is 4 players, it's going to put 4 damage over times. And then if it's 4 wizards, there's going to have 4 hots. So of course, that's why we're using multi-traps in our advantage. Now, instead of having each and individual person trap, we're just having one person move 3 dots over, and then making sure the hitter has a dot on them. So we're putting person 1 doing elemental or spirit trap, so then they can move 3 dots over. And then we're having the hitter just do potent feint, so then they can move a dot over, and then they have a dot and they're okay to kill, and the boss will remove its aura. And then on the last round before you hit, you want to have a person cast purge on the hitter, just because of the fact of there's a chance of you getting hit with a -90. Now, of course, if you have turn prio and you don't have to and you don't have a negative charm on the hitter, then you don't need to purge. You can just pass and just have the person just hit with a 10 pip hit, 8 to 10 pip, whatever, and you're good to go. That kills the boss. With that amount of buffs, you should be killing the boss, unless like your damage is kind of bad. And then if that is the case on round 1, instead of passing, you guys can buff up the hitter if need be. If you're really struggling on buffs and you don't have the damage and pierce and whatnot, on round 1, just incorporate some buffs. The hanging effects don't get placed till round 2. So if you really need buffs, I definitely recommend on round 1 incorporate some extra blades on the hitter, and then you'll be good to go. And then that's how you kill the Shadow Self Magician. Very straightforward. Now, here's the strategy for people that are running 2 or 3 players in their fight. Now, if you're running with 3 people, it's kind of the similar strategy. Round 1, I put passes because you don't really need it if you have solid damage. But what you're going to be doing is just passing and then blading up the last person again, using potent feints this time around, and just run the risk. Right, you're definitely going to have to run the risk in this scenario, and hopefully they don't cast a -90 that turn. And if they don't, then you're good to go. You can cast purge and then hit, and if you don't have any weaknesses, then just ignore the purge and then hit. Kind of straightforward. But you are running a risk in this fight with the potent feints and whatnot. And same thing with the team scenario of 4 people. You are running a risk with potent feint just because they can cast bad juju. So just be wary about that. And then of course, with 2 people, you're doing a similar thing as well, but instead of passing round 1, you're just blading another round. So blading up the second person and then blading them up again, and then casting potent feint and feint, run the risk of a -90 being casted. And then if it doesn't get casted, you don't need the purge. and then you can hit. But if it does get casted on round 1 or 2, you are definitely going to need that purge because you aren't killing, respectfully. So those are strategies for players that are running 4 players, 3 players, or 2 players. Now let's move on to the solo player strategy, which will require a little bit more thinking and whatnot. So you are passing round 1. If you really need to buff round 1, you can. You might need it depending on your school, of course, because for example, Life Wizards or Ice Wizards don't have the highest DPP, so you might need another buff right there. So definitely recommend blading yourself. And then after that, you will be blading and then trapping and then using a frenzy. You do have you're gonna have to go extra rounds because of this. And then after that, you will have to feint or school blade depending on the cheat. When you get to that many rounds in the fight, it does have a randomness factor. So it might be a hot, it might be a dot that gets casted. So then that's when you use either treasure card feint or you use a treasure card school blade. So if you're fire, you pack a TC fire blade or whatnot, you know. So that's where the randomness comes in play. And the reason why you're doing treasure cards is you don't have enough room in your deck. Theoretically you can, but if you don't pack or if you don't get the cards in the right turn, you will have to kind of just reset in a way or prolong the fight. So I definitely recommend keeping those in treasure card. It'll make the fight easier for you solo players. And then after that, you can just use your Scion to do damage, or whatever your highest damage spell is. I just put some examples of spells that you can use. Obviously, you're not using Path Bs for this. You're using Path A Scions and whatnot, just so they can do strong damage. Of course, Storm doesn't need it, so they can just use Storm Owl. And a Life, all they can really use Gnomes. You can definitely use Shadow Enhanced hits. That is an option. I didn't put that on here because I didn't want to have players rely on a Shad in a fight like this to be able to do damage. So depending on how it is, this is what I would do. Depending on your school. And if you get hit with a -90 weakness, well, GG, try again, because that's the one issue with this fight is that -90 weakness. There's other stuff in their Shadow Self Magician's deck, but bad Juju was the worst thing that is in their deck that is annoying, because it's a -90. You can't just like, if it's a shield, you can just pierce through it if you have the pierce. But weakness, you can't do that. So you just have to run the risk. With that many rounds, it's very possible that it's going to happen. And if it does, you can purge, but you will have to extend the rounds even more, and there's going to be more damage over time, more hots to deal with, and it becomes a really long fight for you solo players. So this is just my recommendation when it comes to that, and what I would do. So there's that. And there is a badge in this fight which I didn't go over. I'm just going to put this in at the end, which is Face the Darkness. Defeat Shadow Self Magician in Black Lagoon Darkmoor by swapping all overtimes manually. And I got this badge even though I didn't do it manually. I'm assuming what this means is using dot swaps. So anything that swaps the dot, for example, like Gearhead and stuff. But I was able to get this badge even though I didn't do that. So I'm not too sure if the intended way is to use Gearhead or just using blades and traps is what's going to get us this badge anyways. But for me, it worked by default just by doing the blades and trap situation of how to do this fight intentionally. But I'm not too sure if we're actually supposed to be getting this badge by using like Gearhead, for example. So we'll have to find out in live round, and you guys can let me know in the comments whenever this boss comes out in live round. Hopefully someone sees this and let me know if Gearhead is the intended way or blades and traps is the intended way of getting this badge. I don't know, we'll see, but that's really all I have to say about the badge. But that is the Shadow Self Magician fight. Annoying for solos, pretty easy for people that are in teams of 2, 3, 4. But if you are solo, you will struggle a little bit in my opinion. And sadly, there's no solo badge for this, so I mean, there's that, but I don't know. Anyways, that is it for me. Leave a like, subscribe, all type of stuff, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out, guys.